in my haste to hit record, I forgot to unmute myself. So thank you so much, Jen, for that great introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and ask Jen in a couple of minutes if you want to copy that link to the box folder and paste it back in the chat for those who are just joining us now. That way they can have the link to those resources as well. So welcome everyone. So excited to be with you this morning on a very snowy and icy day, at least here in my home-based office of Sauk City, Wisconsin. It's pretty snowy and pretty icy. So I'm glad that you are all able to join and hopefully you're all staying warm and safe. A couple things about me. My passion is really to empower others, especially supervisors, to coach and grow and mentor their team members. And one of the ways of doing that is to coach through strengths. And what I mean when I say that, there's a couple of different things that you'll hear and themes that you'll see throughout this session. For those of you who are not familiar with Clifton Gallup Strengths, we'll talk a little bit about what that program is, and I am a certified strengths coach, so you'll see some of the materials and resources that I have opportunity to that I'm sharing with you as well. And there are other things other than just Clifton Gallup to discover strengths. Strengths are one's natural talents that show up in our natural behaviors. And if we empower and enable those around us to focus on using their strengths rather than the things that they're naturally not so talented at, you would be surprised by the motivation, the positivity, and in most cases, the growth that individuals can show when given the opportunity to focus on the things that they're naturally talented at. So that's just a little bit of a preview, and I'll be warming us up with some research about focusing on folks' strengths. But then the goal is to really provide you as a supervisor or a manager on how you can use techniques that can enable your teams to focus on their strengths and coaching, especially our student employees who are young. They are very eager to be nurtured. They're very eager to learn how we can provide that influence and foster their growth in a way that's going to spark some interest, spark some thought, and retain our students. And that's a big goal, right? Is to retain, to teach, to grow, to nurture. And the best way to do that is to really show them how to thrive using their strengths and then some tools that go along with it. Like, how do we use our strengths to be better at our jobs? And we'll be talking about all of those things today. So a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight about strengths themselves and about Clifton Gallup is really a just a quick introduction. If you have never heard about Clifton Gallup strengths, really it's taking natural behaviors and talents. What Clifton Gallup has done is done a whole bunch of research that by utilizing those natural strengths and talents and the research that they've done, they've grouped those natural strengths or talents into categories called themes. And if you do ever take, or if you have taken a strengths assessment, you will receive either your top 5, sometimes they do top 10, or you can get a full 34 report of your 34 strengths. They've grouped them into 34 because those are like those natural kind of groupings and themes, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. But the most important thing is just knowing when you focus on your strengths, you are so much more likely to be engaged, to be motivated. You're 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life, and 6 times more likely to be engaged in your job. So the key, and when I'm talking about this, I'm talking with you all as my colleagues, but I want you to envision those students who work with you and that you supervise. And if you can help them enable this concept and these thoughts. That's my goal for today. So the key to personal development or growth is really to fully understand how to apply your greatest talents, your greatest strengths in your everyday life, both personally and professionally. So while that means paying attention to some of the lesser strengths that you have or lesser talents, decades of research has been done to um, really reveal and show that your best opportunity for success is when you recognize and you develop your dominant talents. So something that really intrigued me about Gallup is they've done over 80 years of research. And that's a long time, 80 years of research. And that's where they discovered some of the following research statements. So people that are working in their natural strengths zone or focusing on those behaviors and talents that they have. Almost every industry and job this research has covered. And across the board, having that opportunity to use and develop your strengths is important to your success, to your role. It's more important than your job title or perhaps even the pay. So when you think about working in the strength zone, these people look forward to going to work. They have more positive than negative interactions. Treat customers or those they work with better. Tell their friends they work for a great company. Wouldn't that be cool to hear? Students telling other students, oh my gosh, you have to come over here. This is the best job I've ever had. My supervisor is helping me nurture and grow. The We Grow program is fantastic. Wouldn't that be great if we started to hear that chatter show up on a regular basis? They'll achieve more. They'll have more positive, creative, and innovative moments. So I want you to think about that and how beyond the world of work, there are really compelling reasons to understand, appreciate, and intentionally use our natural talents. So how do we discover what those are and how do we tap into those? And a trick that I've learned, if I'm not using an assessment, is really to talk to people and find out what motivates them. Find out what they really love to do, or what two things about this job are their favorite, and what two things about this job maybe aren't their biggest favorite, or maybe are lower on the totem pole. Maybe it's part of the job and they have to do it and recognize it. But if they could spend the day doing one or two things on the list of 10, which two would those be? Right? So talking about it. And now I want you to think about these kind of examples of natural behaviors. Mine, I have many of these. I ask a lot of questions. I am definitely very competitive, so I usually always pick a person to race when I'm driving or a destination to race to. But when you think about these behaviors, some people think, oh, they're just personality quirks, idiosyncrasies, but really they're our talents. They're natural behaviors that we can apply in our everyday life. And for most of us, no one taught us how to do these things, right? They come to us naturally. It's part of our natural talent or behavior. So everybody has talents. Everybody has strengths. Not everyone has an opportunity to transform those talents into strengths. And so talents become, if we focus on them and we focus on what comes natural to us, it becomes a positive momentum, a positive force, and it really becomes often transformative. And I want to share a story with you about how this showed up in my life. So I think it was about 12 or 15 years ago-ish, I was working at a company outside of UW, private sector, and we started to take this thing called Clifton Strengths Assessment. Prior to that, though, so go back into my personal life, My daughter was in middle school age and soon to be entering in high school, and was really struggling with math. Math was a subject that just did not come to her at all. And not only was it a struggle for her, it was such a struggle for me to, and my husband, to sit countless hours with her, so frustrated trying to teach. It just wasn't sinking in. And when it would sink in, it took forever and forever. And I'm sure those of you who either have children or you yourselves as students, or even students that you supervise, if they're struggling with a subject or a topic and it's just like they spend so much time and effort on it, and the only thing that comes out of it for us was frustration and a C or a D grade. And I struggled so hard with this. The more time we put in, the more frustrated we both got. And the more time we spent worrying about math, the more time she was anxious about school altogether. So fast forward a few years, she was able to go on to college, and she majored in early childhood education. She made the dean's list every semester. And do you want to know why? And this is when the light bulb finally went off. Yes, she had to take math, in high school, and math in college, and it wasn't the best subject, and it was one she got through. We were okay with her getting through it. But when she went on to focus on early childhood education, her major, the things that she naturally loved to do and what was talented at, dean's list every semester. She loved school. She hated school in high school. She loved school in college. And so that's just a personal story that resonated with me. And that's what the light kind of went on in my head. And that is when my passion for kind of getting more into strengths and figuring out how I can use it better and use the resources to help all of us really became my fuel for my fire. So that's what kind of lights my passion is. And this quote really kind of resonates with me too, is the people who do use their natural talents, or they focus on the things that they're naturally good at or gifted at or like to do, 7.8% greater productivity. Teams are 8.9% greater profitability. So here's the quote then that resonated with me. What will happen when we think about what is right with people rather than fixating on what is wrong with them? What will happen when we think about our students, what they do really well? Tap into that rather than fixating on what they might not be so good at. I'm not saying, and we'll have some discussion on this in just a minute, I'm not saying that the things, parts of the job that are essential, that someone is having a hard time doing, that we don't put the time and effort into teaching them. That's not what I'm saying. But if we find ways to tap into their natural strengths and then identify how they can achieve those tasks using those natural strengths, how great would that be? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and invite some questions. And then we're going to do just a really quick, not round robin, but folks who feel comfortable can unmute. And I just want to get your thoughts on what we've just talked about for the last few minutes. And wrapping that up with a quote, think about what impact or power you could have with the students that you supervise by focusing on what they do well. So feel free, I invite questions. I invite you to unmute and to share your thoughts, or share maybe a question that you have around that.
I can comment. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Well, good morning. My name is Michael. I work over at McBurney Disability Resource Center. And I guess my comment is just to confirm that what you're saying has actually helped me. I do want to explore this further because it was sort of like a light bulb moment for me where I was working with a student employee who I supervise. And in my specific department at McBurney, we do a lot of editing of documents to ensure that they are accessible for students with disabilities. And so the student was struggling a little bit to be motivated. But once I started to focus on this student in particular is very good at communication, very good at what I think could evolve into leadership. And I expressed that in a check-in, how I view this individual as in the future becoming a leader in our department and being able to communicate with other students who are struggling as employees with a specific task. And this was sort of like the moment where I saw this switch in this student where they're like, oh my gosh, like, how can I learn to do this then? They were way more motivated to train, and I saw this and it was really cool to see. And I'm like, wow, well, how can I incorporate this into other students? So just confirming what you said, that, this really does help. And so I'm hoping to learn more.
Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate you sharing. And Laura in the chat, I like that. One of the cool parts, being one of the first supervisors for students, is that they haven't always figured out what those strengths in the workplace are. Yes, introducing that idea and reinforcing those to build confidence is so gratifying. Awesome. And yes, you're right, Laura. Often the skills that are needed in the classroom are completely different that are needed in the workplace. So being able to introduce your students to those job responsibilities, job expectations, and identifying what their natural strengths and talents are, and then finding a way to blend that. Wow, what a perfect marriage, right? Other thoughts, other comments?
Hi, Shelly. I really appreciate you walking us through all the Gallup's research, but also really taking the students' talent and really harnessing that in the workplace. So when I think about coaching and being a student supervisor, they can be relatively similar and also a little bit different in certain ways. What are maybe the top 3 things to keep in mind as you are trying to hold on to these different roles as a supervisor, but perhaps a coach as well in the workplace?
I think you read my slides in advance, Jen, because I'm going to go right into that next. There are 3 key areas that I focused on for part of this presentation. And the first one is to identify strengths. And I'm going to talk to you about an approach on how to do that. Second is to set clear goals and provide you with some resources on how to do that. And thirdly, it's talking about it and provide you some resources on how to structure maybe meetings or one-on-ones to incorporate some of those tools. So before I do that, I want to focus on a couple of these comments in the chat. Brett said he's really interested in devoting more energy into strengths-based coaching, very hands-off with supervision, and empower my students to complete their tasks independently. So I don't always observe what their strengths really are or what specific value adds are to our team. How would you recommend I identify strengths in this type of model? Great question, Brett. I think the talking through it with the team, and I'll show you some resources on how to do that. If you do have resources to purchase the strengths assessment for your students, if you are interested, I do, as a strengths-based coach, have some codes that I can provide at a discount. Gallup allows me to purchase them at half the price. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me and I can provide you with those codes so you can purchase strengths assessments for your team. Or if you just want to research more, you can go on the Gallup website and I'll show you some more information and tools on that. But also a great way to identify strengths and to really tap in is just ask. Spend some time with the students. Ask them what really motivates them. Like, what is it that excites them when they come to work? And if nothing, what is it that excites you at school? Or what is it that excites you in your personal life? And from there, you can start to identify themes, trends, and put your finger on some of those strengths. I also have a resource that lists all top 34. So you can dig into like what those are and independently do that as well. Matt, you have a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, asking is a great tactic. Just being honest with them about what they really want to be a part of. Matt Douglas, he, him, his, with Student Print. We run a student-run printing business on campus.
Nice.
So part of the interviewing process, we sort of identify the different project teams that we have to keep the business running, whether you're on the finance team, the marketing team, inventory, equipment, etc. And get their interest. What are they interested in? A lot of students will be studying marketing or nonprofit leadership and will want to get into outreach or marketing. Some people are studying finance and with the business school, and they really want to be a part of the billing process. And I've got 2 financial specialists right now. One's also a technologist, but one's a freshman, and I gave a motivated speech about this is their business to run, and I'm here to help them and assist them along their way and teach them ways to apply what they're learning and giving them more experience. And I had those 2 folks come in over winter break to help me prepare the budget for our next fiscal year and our estimated actual budget. So giving them hands-on opportunities and then really letting them know what, based on what they're interested in doing, what activities or what work they can focus on, and then just giving them the tools to go at it in be more autonomous in the work where they can go and dive into the work as they have time. So that's really worked for me at Student Print.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Matt. I'm sure everyone will benefit from that. And if the rest of you on this call have thoughts, ideas, feel free to share them out, because this is where we all learn. And even though I'm the facilitator, I usually learn something in every single session that I facilitate from my participants. So let's make this a community where we're going to foster this idea and figure out ways and opportunities that we can champion it. I'm here to provide you with a little bit of information and knowledge, enough to be dangerous, and some resources that you can rely on. But then let's continue, let's continue to champion this and figure out a way that we can really engage our students in the work that they do. Tony.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to actually piggyback off what Matt was saying. That sometimes some of those strengths that I don't find in the very beginning of conversations or through the years I get to know our student staff more, a lot of those really come out for me during the We Grow conversations. And I find that that's a really excellent way for me to find some of those strengths and initiate those conversations so that I can be looking for those opportunities in the future.
That's a great point. And I know Brenda is on the line too. I think you all have access to the We Grow resources, but I know that there are, We Grow conversation guides and things like that that you can utilize. So I would say use those as well. Those conversations can be so impactful. And someone mentioned in chat, I think it was Marcy, that as a new student supervisor, she struggles with getting students to think or speak honestly and openly and not just come up with the right answer. Like, what is your strength? Time management. I'm good at time management. Great. Well, how do we engage students in a way that's going to kind of pull it out? And I would say honesty, just being very candid, end goal, the positive intent, you care about them and you want to help them. This is a stepping stone. right? This part of their college transition, stepping stone, you care about them. This is an opportunity for you to help them figure out what it is that they really want to do, right? This could be a job that has absolutely nothing with what they're majoring in or what they want to do, and they found interest in it, or vice versa, right? So just talking and being honest and paying attention and caring, I think really go a long way. And we'll go through some resources as to how to do that too. So Carrie writes too, oh, thanks Brenda for putting those, the We Grow website link in the chat. That's going to be great for all of you to see what resources are out there as well. And Carrie put in the chat, I found that there's a lot of value in giving students an opportunity to share the strengths they see in their student staff peers, so that peer-to-peer can help when you have a lot of staff. And sometimes things land differently when they hear things from their peers. So giving the space to do that is helpful. Excellent point, Carrie. One of the resources that we'll talk through too is like a team conversation guide, and you really do it in a team style when you can. I know that student schedules really hard to get them all together at the same time, but when you can, have some of your meetings as a team sort of style versus one-on-one, and see what that generates. Nicole, great, she does that too. She asks her students who they look up to on the team and what skills stand out that they want to learn. That's an excellent idea, Nicole. Thank you and Carrie both for sharing that. All right, I'm going to transition just a moment and put our resources again in the box folder. And when you see these, don't be completely overwhelmed, or try not to be completely overwhelmed. I couldn't stop myself when I started going and putting some things in there. There's a lot. And I'll walk you through those in just a minute. But before I walk you through that, I wanted to go ahead and just talk through those 3 things and then highlight some resources that go along with that. So let me go back to sharing my screen here. All right, so you can all see my full screen. We talked a little bit about the Clifton strengths and the assessments, but I just want to show you the different themes there are. So 34 strengths, combination of I think there's 34 million combinations of these. So it is very unlikely that you will find someone with the exact same 34 profile or even top 5. But they all fall into kind of buckets or groupings. And those groupings are based on 4 different areas: executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. So if you think about executing, some of the themes being very disciplined, really key hone in on responsibility, achiever. So achieving, having some concrete goals and steps and a pathway to get to. Influencing, being out there, being able to coach and influence others to do things. Relationship building, the positivity, the empathy, the connect. You know, I feel a connection. I can connect with people really easily. And then strategic thinking, more on the analytical side, love data, intellection, learner, strategic in nature. So those are the groupings, the basic language of the talent or the strengths. So that resource is available to you as well. Next, I'm just going to go right into some coaching tips and the top 3 that I would recommend you focus on, especially if you are a newer supervisor. And thanks for the shout out, Marcy. I am a woo. It is in my top 5. And I love the woo. Woo is win over others. So it's all about the woo in some cases. For coaching strategies, especially if you don't know where to start, here is what I would recommend. First, identify your students' strengths and opportunities. Excuse me. Set clear goals and then talk about it. So 3 things: identify those strengths and opportunities, set some clear goals around them, or that include them, or that use their natural talents to achieve the goal, and then talk about it. Bring it up, walk through it, just meet and talk as frequently as you can. Here's some resources, and this will become more apparent when I go back to the box folder and show you as well. So for identifying strengths and opportunities, there is a strengths discovery discussion guide in the resources that I really like, and you might not use it the way it might be intended for like a strengths coach, but you might use it just to glean some questions of how to have conversations with your teams. The Best of Us is a great guide that I like. It talks about I'm at my best when, and it gives you a starting point of maybe at your next one-on-one, pull that out, ask a couple of questions. In combination, I'm not saying don't compromise any of the We Grow structure. These are just additional tools and questions to enhance your conversations. There's also another one that talks about your partnerships. So there's so many tools in there, but I wanted to highlight 2 or 3 that I like for these specific coaching opportunities. The second one is setting clear goals. And we know as part of the We Grow program, we do have those conversations. There are a few that I really like. Strengths-based goal setting template is a good one that's in there. How to Write Smart Goals is another resource from another university. And that one I use quite a bit, especially with training supervisors on how to set goals. And then Getting to Know the Needs is another great resource. It talks about team needs. And then you can take those needs and create goals around them by using some of the other goal setting resources. Lastly, talking about it, there is a guide out there. It's called One-on-One Meetings Guide ebook. I love this guide. Some of the information might be really basic and might just be a good resource or a review for you. But then there's also some great meeting templates. So even if beyond the scope of student supervision, if you're supervising others that aren't students, you can use these same tools with them as well. So it really creates some structure when you have an agenda, and maybe you carve out 5 or 10 minutes of that agenda to just kind of highlight some of their strengths, some of the things that you've just learned about them, and how they've been able to apply those talents to the job. And then what next? And are there other talents that, from some of the chat, we got some great ideas about asking about, are there other skills that you see folks doing that you want to learn? So I'll talk through some of those resources in a moment, and then we'll open it up for some more conversation. But I wanted to end with this statement. This is very powerful for me from my own personal story, and also for working with even my own teammates. There's no more effective way to empower people than to see each person in terms of his or her strengths, his, her, or their strengths. So think about that. No more effective way to empower people than to see each person in terms of their strengths. All right, I'm going to stop sharing here for a moment, and I'm going to bring up that box folder and walk you through some of these things. So we put the link back in the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that. Also, we should be able to send out, like we can send out the PowerPoint slides or put them in this box folder and send a link to that as well. So I'll put those slides in here too. I'm gonna share this screen. All right, so here is the folder for our resources. Again, very sorry for the link, but I thought it would be great for you all to have a place to go. And you can see a lot of these that are directly from Clifton Gallup strengths are from my coaching toolkit. So they're great resources. Use them how you want. There's no right or wrong kind of way. They're just additional tools in your toolbox. So the first link I just wanted to show you with additional training information. This is just a Word document that I put some resources out there for you. This is a LinkedIn learning course. I think the total length of the course is a little over an hour, but it's broken up into lots of different modules, and you can watch that in like 1 or 2 modules is like 2 or 3 minutes a module. You do need make sure you're logged in to your UW, Net ID, and you go into the LinkedIn, and you can do that link, and then there's different modules. Now with that course, there's also these exercise materials that I found to be super helpful. And these are in there as well. So they're right here, LinkedIn Learning, articulating your strengths exercise files. So one of them was, let's see, that I really liked, maximizing team strengths. So helping others understand their own strengths, pick a colleague or a team member, have them do this exercise about you. So you could do this in a team. Select a team member and write down what you think his or her top 5 strengths are. Great team activity that you could just kind of talk through. So I'll go back to the box here, folder. The one-on-one meetings guidebook is right here. How to write SMART goals. This is that research document. University of California. This is a great resource. What are SMART goals? What's the criteria? How do I, what's the scope? It gives you examples and some templates. So I really like that one too. Some of these, like the talent in action cards, if you look at them, you could print them out. You can use them as a motivational factor. So the front of the card has different sayings. And then the back of the card, if you print them together, two-sided, double-sided, I think it's called, recognizing, hey, I saw this theme of yours in action, or I saw you demonstrate this today. Maybe it was someone filled in when someone was off, or someone was sick and someone else came in. I saw this. What was the theme? Dedication, commitment, care, whatever, or you can actually use one of the strengths if you know what they are. This is something that helps our team, and just use it as a motivational tool. Call it out. Let's see, in the chat, does team size matter? I only have 3 students. Absolutely not. Even if you only have 1, just having some of these conversations, you can tweak these tools to match the size and the intent of what you want to accomplish. Let's see. There are the best of us is one of the ones that I recommend. You get the best of me when. You get the worst of me when. For me, you get the worst of me when you interrupt me. I tell that to my husband all the time. Not for any of you else, but to my husband. You get the worst of me when you interrupt me, because then I can't continue with my train of thought and you interrupted me. You get the best of me when you let me talk and then ask questions after. Just a personal example. You can count on me too. And what do I need from you? Great questions that can stimulate those conversations. Let's see. There's managing to strengths. again, if you don't know your top 5 signature themes, you can skip that box. But like most important tasks, responsibilities, and expectations of this team member's role. These look a little wonky because I didn't download them, but if you download them, it'll print right. Team member strengths, goals, aspirations, challenges. Just another way to kind of frame that conversation. How are you similar? How are you different? Right? Comparing team member to manager or team member to team member. If you have a challenge situation with team members, maybe you use something like this to get them to talk through it. What is it that you guys both have in common? What is it that you struggle with? What are you butting heads with? How can we use those strengths that you do have to get through this difficult situation? What can we do about that? Right. All right, I'm going to stop sharing because you all have links to the resources. And I invite at this time questions, other topics that you might want us to tap into or maybe provide resources on, or if you have things that you're doing that are working really well, I'd love for you to share those. Michelle.
Hey, Shelly. So the one thing for me that was really awesome for taking the strengths assessment was that it helped give me the language to articulate my own personal strengths. And I would think that especially someone brand new in their career, like a student, would share that similarity. So what resources, I mean, I don't know if we can really necessarily like pay for every student to take a strengths assessment, but what are some ways that you would help them find the language to articulate strengths?
Great question, Michelle. If you can't, if you don't have the resources to be able to, provide the strengths assessment for your students, there is, let's see, one of the resources in the box folder is called the Clifton Strengths Themes. So I'm going to share this. And this gives kind of a shortened version of each of the strengths and then a definition of what they are. So this is a good way of like kind of taking, like you could say, name five adjectives that describe you. And the person might say, I'm really detail oriented. I love people, or they might say people, adjective based words or like phrases that describe you. Maybe it's, I'm really competitive and I really like a challenge and I really like to win. Okay, well, I'm thinking that they're probably pretty, have pretty high competition as a theme then. And then if I go to this competition, they strive to win first place and revel in contests. Competition would be a theme that motivates them. So maybe when you're talking with them about achieving their goal, maybe make some sort of a competition out of it. Or, how many of these do you think you can get done today? And they're like, oh, I bet I can get 5 done. All right, let's see if you can get 5 done. What's the time frame? And kind of play to that strength. Does that help a little bit, Michelle?
Definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's see. Simplicity of activities and questions, but we often get so caught up, yes, and day-to-day focusing on strengths-based conversations might seem a little overwhelming on the surface. 1,000%. And that's why I hesitate to show you all those resources. However, with the little time that we have, I wanted to make it most effective by offering everybody something. So pick one thing out of here that maybe you could use. Maybe it's one question that you would add to your one-on-one, right? Maybe it's self-reflection so that you can hone in on your strengths, leverage them more, and then model, as Carrie said in the chat, model them to your students. Let's see, McKenna. how can I get them to see the greater value of this position? Oh, great. So we have students that are at the front desk. Historically, a job where students answer the phone, they greet visitors, complete homework whenever they don't have any work to do. So how can I get them to see the greater value of this position? Awesome. Two things. Find out what makes them tick, find out a little bit about what motivates the students, and then pull out some of those aspects of what the front desk can offer to that. So if someone has natural talent or love of people, and how can greeting them at the front desk turn that experience into something grand or something greater than what it is, right? Thank you, Nicole, for offering to connect with McKenna. I think that's great. If you can find one or two people that maybe do similar roles and have ideas to brainstorm or maybe peruse through some of these resources and take a couple and try them on, that is great. But any way you can highlight the benefit, first explain, what is the benefit of the office? What are the primary goals of the front desk? And then how can students tap into that to feel a connection or get connected? And not everyone is going to. I mean, realistically, students, and as I was one too, need a job to pay for school. I paid for it on my own. So at some point, it's a job, and that's the necessity for the money. So not everyone is going to be a natural fit, right? But how can you try to make it a little bit more enticing so that it's not just a job or a way for money, it's also an opportunity for them to explore and to figure out if this is a good fit. And if it's not, what they could maybe focus on. So end goal, help them be successful. Other thoughts, questions, comments? I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat just in case any of you have other things that you wanted to talk about and we didn't either have time, or if you just want to keep that handy and touch base with me offline, I welcome the opportunity. So awesome. Thanks, Emily and Marcy, for the comments. Great idea. You could get like glossy paper, like photo stock or just glossy paper or cardstock, and print those out, cut them, make your own cards to hand out. There's some individual ones as well. And if you ever are in doubt, even just a blank note card and writing down what you observed and what the impact was. So, for example, when you filled in for so-and-so last week, you saved me the headache, frustration, and struggle of trying to find someone or covering the work myself and doubling my hours. I appreciate that so much. Like, impact. What was the impact? What did you observe? What was the impact? And what was the effect? What do you want to mimic? Brenda.
Hi, Shelly. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
I wanted to highlight a question that Kate brought up in the chat. I think we had a bunch of messages that came in around the same time, but Kate asks, do our top 5 strengths ever change, like throughout the course of our lifetime?
Great question, and thanks for highlighting that back up. I did not see that, so thanks, Brenda, and thank you, Kate. So the research behind Gallup strengths is no, they do change, and they will change slightly. But for most of us, those natural talents and behaviors stay with us for the most part. Your top 5 may switch a little bit, but probably your top 10 or your top 10 forever, and they forever will be. So Gallup does not recommend taking the strengths assessment more than once or even often. So it is it's not that you can't do it. I've taken it probably 3 times. My top 5 have moved around, and sometimes one will come out and be like 6, and that previous 6 one will be in my top 5, but they are for the most part, and this has been over a period of, gosh, 15 plus years. So the short answer, no. And I wouldn't recommend taking the strengths assessment often. It's different than some of the personality assessments out there. Those I have found can change depending on what's going on in your life. Like a personality assessment that I may have taken 20 years ago that put me like in a command, or I think it was called like a bull, a bull role, like very strong, dominant role. That might have been 20 years ago. Now, I probably have a different, combination of things. So that's my short and long answer. McKenna, also a new student supervisor, front desk. Oh, no, we already covered that question. Can you touch on what the critiques of strengths are and how to acknowledge and name that in using it? I'm not sure I understand the question, Carrie. Do you mean what challenges might be? We'll see if we can get clarification to that. And yes, Marcy, the DISC assessment is great. We also use that at Office of Admissions and Recruitment, and we have the DISC, and we have all of our profiles on what's called the Catalyst. So if you want more resources for that, and you are not in the Division of Enrollment Management, go seek out Marcy in Learning and Talent Development, because they do offer the DISC assessment. So that's another option as well. Shorter term, excellent. So yes, when you are running a summer day camp and you only have the students for like this much time, so pick 1 or 2 of those questions. I would see that maybe in your first or second activity together, to get to know each other, get to know one another. Maybe it's that, like, you get the best of me when. That might be a really cool activity that you could do, highlighting some of those things. Let's see. Personality and strengths test may be based, and have that has not come to light with any of the strengths-based things that I have seen, Carrie. And if you do want to chat offline about it, just shoot me a Teams or an email, and maybe I can get more specific into that question. Wonderful. And Brenda put in the links about the DISC. Great. Well, I think in the sake of time, I want to make sure I don't go over. I will turn it back over and see if Jen has anything else she wants to highlight before we wrap up. But I appreciate everybody on the call today, and I've had just a blast working with you all. So please reach out to me if you have any other questions. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, I want to first off thank you to you, Shelly, for taking the time to share the knowledge and resources. I'm sure myself, and I'm sure many others on this call, will use them. I love that there's just a variety, like ranging from individual assessments or even doing them with groups. And so I will definitely be utilizing them with my student employees. So thank you so much for having this session today. And so with that, I would also like to thank everyone who attended today's session. I will pass this one over to Carrie, and she will share a Mentimeter survey with you all. We would love to hear from you all about you as a supervisor. So I will change this to Carrie.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. Give me just a moment while I share my screen. Sorry about that. I don't know if you all heard that.